Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster, where we get to, continue on and work towards our new theme. This actually isn't going to be covering that just yet. We need to fill in this transitional area that's at the edge of the European section, and we are doing this to get this straight line pulling effect going across this upper section for the backstage area mainly. In theory, we could have just started the next theme instantly, but I think it would have been a little bit weird of a transition. I think we would like to see some sort of a little bit of a build up, and to do that, what I'm going to be doing is working on this small European-esque playground. It was a suggestion a long time ago in Alpine Odyssey that we have playgrounds, children's areas, and things in between or every so often throughout the park, just to make sure the kids are, entertained as well as they should be. Parents, from my understanding, I'm not one myself, but they would get tired out of their kids constant running around, and this is a good place for them to take a little bit of a break. And since it's in the European theme, we are going to be doing some European style, you could say, playground elements. So up here on this raised wooden platform, this is going to be very similar to what we have been doing everywhere else. It is a Tudor-ish style building. It's going to have a roof and, things like that. And all these raised elements. I don't know how many of you guys have gone to, say, a wooden playground. Wooden playgrounds are very different than what you might see in a stereotypical, school ground kind of play area. At least here in the States. Wooden ones tend to be a lot more compact, a lot more layers, and also a lot more almost like tunnels and interactions with itself. And that's what I'm trying to capture, at least a little bit here. We didn't have a whole lot of room to work with, and I didn't want to just do a whole bunch of wooden timbered structures everywhere. So, we're just kind of continuing on. Of course, it's going to have a custom tile set because everything in Alpine Odyssey seems to be using way too many pieces than necessary. So here we are, tiling out this little roof section. And, you can think of these to be like playhouses, things for kids to interact with and run through. We have a nice kind of flat open area here with a different tiled bottom. I wanted this tile set down there, one of the flat roof tile sets, to be the ground because to me it's very reminiscent of that foamy rubber that, you might run into when you are on the playground. And that's to prevent, any major falls or anything like that from hurting these smaller children. And to me, those large kind of square tiles for that flooring kind of reminds me of that. It's very modular. It looks like it can be replaced easily enough, and it's just a different pattern than really anywhere else we use in the park. We also have a little bit of a cobblestone-like element, and then, of course, the red sidewalk near the main street roadway there. And that's just, we have 3 different colors interacting with each other, and they're also interacting with each other in different ways, which is, I think a cool little trick to do. So we are creating an upper deck area, and now all these low fences, doors, and all this stuff, in theory, they should be opened. You could say that we should be seeing inside these structures, but to me, it's so non-functional that it would look weird to me if I open them up completely, and also the area that we have to work with is rather small. So I'm using doors more so than anything, and solid, thicker walls, just because it's easier to work with. Planet Coaster still has that little bit of an issue of it's kind of hard to build at a really small scale. In fact, it's a lot slower to build at this scale for us because we're more used to using our predetermined tile set, editing it a little bit, and that speeds things up very dramatically over time. And here, just doing a lot of hand placement of these items, and it's, you can use copy and paste where you can and to your advantage, but it's much harder to do like a grid aligned building when you don't have pieces big enough to actually fit on that grid. So the only grid item here is one little wooden post sunk into the ground, and that allows this to be all part of a singular building, but we don't really get any advantages of being able to use a grid. So this wooden kind of deck system, that's going to be kind of the main aspect to the right side of the playground, is going to be multi-layered. We're going to have this upper deck going around the almost European style structure up there. It's going to have some mid-level decks, and we're just trying to lay down the framework here so that we know, where everything else is going to work and how it interconnects into itself. In fact, that's a double entryway kind of staircase there at the bottom, so you can come in from the back side or the front side, which could be neat, to just run across. And I just picture playing tag in places like this. There's a whole lot of running, and we're also going to add some rope kind of ties here along the upper railing. It's a really tall structure, so it's kind of, you could say, dangerous in a sense. However, the railing is actually about 3 feet tall, so it wouldn't be easy for them to jump off of. And then I also assume there'd be parents sitting in this area, a lot of them, and kids, we like to jump off stuff, but I doubt they would want to do it so close to their parents. At least if they have any sort of tact, they would choose to jump off a tree kind of hidden away in the neighbor's yard rather than right in front of them here in front of all their other friends. So we have some wooden decking going up here, copy and paste. Luckily that works, and I do want to leave a little bit of a space in between each of these planks. It makes it look a little bit more dynamic and more interesting. The stairs are a different color, the framework is a different color, and then also the main flooring is a different color, just to try and make things pop out a little bit more. So here we cut open a little bit of a slot into the structure, and you'll see why we did that in just a moment. We are going to extend the roof over a little bit, square it up with the rest of the building, and just kind of make that look a little bit more flush in an interesting style. We do use that archer down on the first floor for scale. It's super important to use animatronics for scale, especially when you're working on something so small. Normally you can kind of get away with not using that because you're using kind of 4-meter wide tile pieces, and doorways are only going to fit within that area somehow, and in a set of windows. When you're doing custom shapes and buildings such as this, you kind of have to use something else to bring that scale over. We are going to wall and fence this area off from the backstage area, and I was a little concerned that this wall was going to be too narrow, because if you can see how tall our current structure is, it can really look over there. However, when we fill in this with planters and trees and thick shrubs as a visual block to the backstage area, not only does it look good because it's kind of back in the backdrop of the playground, but it functions as a taller wall without necessarily having to make one yourself. Over here on this far side, we are making a rope kind of ladder staircase for the kids to climb up on. And these things are always fun for anyone to be challenged to race up on, or just climb that extra. I guess that's about 5 meter technically in terms of Planet Coaster scale. It feels smaller just due to the size of the pieces we're working with, but it is apparently 4 meters tall-ish. So hey, there's that. We have plenty of cool planter borders here, and I don't want to follow the whole edge of the actual playground. I think it would look a little more dynamic if we have some cuts in and out. That's kind of important to me. And here we are actually working on a slide. Now, I'm doing a slide for a couple reasons. One, because it's a playground, and I feel like it would probably be a very necessary part to be a success. And also, because eventually we do want to make a large water park type of area. So this is a good opportunity to practice making some slides. And, all of these are made out of art shapes. Just kind of stacked onto each other and twisted and essentially seamed by creating another ring at specific joints to make it look like the kind of plastic pre-molded pieces that you see in a lot of playgrounds or water parks. You know, if you guys want to see successful water parks, I would suggest looking at Quali Beach. They have some great set of slides and things like that. That's kind of where I got my inspiration from. I don't know of many other people who have done water parks, but again, I also haven't really looked. So for me, that's kind of where I came up with the idea of using these pieces in this way. However, I'm sure many people have done it as well. Now, I'm not worrying about the color at this stage. I'm more worried about looking at the form and making sure it actually looks like it functions, in which case it does. And I also like that it's kind of in the back middle in between these two taller raised sections. I think it's a good eye-catching piece to have there, and I think it works pretty well. I was a little bit worried about getting the exit to the slide to function and at least look like the exit point. But you know, with the small enough art pieces and art shapes, I think it turned out to be rather successful. We'll also have to use this trick, I think, for the water slide as well. And I'm not sure if I should use a bigger tube for the water slide. I probably should, especially if they have like an inner tube going down with them. It should probably take up a little bit more area. But if it's a body slide like this, and especially for children, I think it's an okay scale. We color the thing red because that's rather eye-catching, and the joints are kind of a darker red. We'll kind of seal up the rest of the gap just to make it look more like it's part of the building, and also so kids don't necessarily jump from there. I think that would be a bad thing in general, and also probably a liability for our park if you think about it. We extend the railing and balcony section that is supported from those lower wooden beams over here to this side. And for some reason, I don't know what it was, but throughout the rest of this build, the gizmo was not my best friend. I had a lot of problems. I don't know if that's because at one point something was off by a degree, and so now everything is off by a degree. But those are problems that you kind of run into, and you just have to kind of deal with it and keep pushing on. It does slow down the work in a sense, but it's okay. We have this vertical beam going across here, and my theory behind this was that it is a what's the correct term for this? Wow, I'm blanking on this term. Essentially, you grab the handle and you can slide across on this rail. It's not a zip line. It might be called something else, but it's very similar to a zip line in theory. We're going to have a rope net down below, you know, so you don't necessarily have to wait for the kid to go all the way across to actually attempt to go across yourself. And two, if you let go and happen to fall, you do have this wide, broad net to catch any kids who happen to make the plunge. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to fully encapsulate the whole area there, but I decided against it just due to composition reasons. If you guys want some more safety nets, I can do something like that, but you know, this is a non-functional area. At a cursory glance, I think it functions just fine. Here, we are adding more timber frames, thicker beams, and areas where we're going to have some additional low-lying wooden platforms. And this is just to help keep the shape really dynamic and interact with itself over time. I think that's probably the most successful thing about this playground element. It's not so much that it's an accurate playground or even really necessarily a good representation of one. I just like the play that you get with these lower decks, with these upper decks, the slide in the background, and the I keep wanting to call it a zip line section there, because it creates a little bit more of an interesting composition. I don't know how well it succeeds at being an interesting playground, but I'll leave that up to you guys in the comments down below. You all are always full of pretty much the feedback that has built and assisted with all these months in Alpine Odyssey. It has been quite a joy to work on it with you all, so we're just continuing on with that. We have a wooden framed kind of tunnel section here. Up above it, there's going to be another kind of European style building, but for here, I wanted a really kind of claustrophobic, closed-in area where, you know, kids can hide, run through. It always feels cool to run through these type of tunnels. It almost feels like a hidden section of the playground itself. I know the wooden kind of playground where I grew up had a lot of those. In fact, it was very easily, you know, you could get lost in there, and I just like that feeling for playgrounds. I kind of miss the old style playgrounds because of that. You don't get that very often, just very modern plastic playgrounds like you do these days. Here we have a little bit of it's a bridge, it's a rope bridge, you know, it's one of those ones where, you know, it moves as you go across it. It's a very common element in playgrounds, having those things. It's kind of like a balancing act, and they're just fun to run across because you can really feel the terrain moving under you. So back here we are doing a climb wall to get from the lower deck up to the upper section here on this playground, and it is an interesting element. When I was little, we didn't really have much of this. However, I think it would be a fun element to have. We'll have to color these in a random kind of assortment of colors, make sure it looks a little bit more random than it currently does. So we'll have some reds, we'll have some blues, some golds, which kind of look yellow because of the wood texture, some blacks, greens, and whites to just fill up and make the whole thing look very colorful. Now, you know, I know some people are like, "Whoa, you know, rock walls, careful, you can fall off those." Like, it's not that tall. And also they're very kind of easily grabbed locations, and everything's really close together. So it's probably gonna act a lot more like a ladder, more so than a rock wall, but it's an interesting climbing element. And that's the thing with playgrounds, you know, you really want to mix and match different ways to change the height as you go through. It doesn't have to all be stairs or wooden platforms, and that's what I was trying to do with this build. Here we are going to have two more slides. These will be the last two slides, and unlike the first one, they are going to be open slides because variety is nice. And if I just did some more tube slides, I think it would look a little bit more lame. And an open slide, you know, it's not quite as tall. It's not doing any twists or anything. They're just nice straight lines, and they just look cool. Basically, that's why I'm putting it there. It looks cool. It also balances out the left side a little bit more because there's a lot more elements on the back side than the front side. So this is kind of taking up the front side composition and letting the back side take up there. Same with the slide on the back side over there. So on the front side, on the middle, we have the bridge and the zip line type of thing. And that's, I think, a decent compromise between the two elements. Here we are going to make a little bit of a swing set. Now it is going to connect with the main structure there, just for, you know, structural sake, more so than anything. It doesn't necessarily need that pole to go all the way over, but if you you know, if you were like me when I was little, the goal of every swing set was to go as high and as far as possible, trying to tip the thing over. So having it basically bolted into the wooden structure that is not going to move at all is a good, I guess, insurance to make sure that does not happen. And it's also going to be a small swing set, so, you know, only 2 swings on there. Probably going to be a pretty popular item. It's probably going to be a little crowded, but you know, hopefully when we get some additional, there might be another kid park like element, dividing up 2 other zones, and then our water park. We'll have to come up with other ways to transition between different areas, but you know, a few kid parts I think will help balance that out, and the kids will probably pick their favorite one. Parents probably like the one closer to the exit or closer to the restaurants, and you know, that's a logical choice that they would probably make. So here is the swing set going in with the actual swings, and just a simple rope with a wooden plank at the bottom. They don't have to be more complicated than that. And it's also going to have, you know, an additional kind of triangle pole set up on the left side just to make it look a little bit more stable and make sure that it's very obvious where the swings are going, and you can kind of avoid them if you're running around this area a little bit easier if you can actually see that left and right limit. Here is the wooden decking for the new structure going over here on the left side. The structure is a little bit smaller than the first one. In fact, it's just that simple upward kind of square area. However, we will be using that kind of plastery color, and we'll also be introducing some brick here just to make it look a little bit different. Still probably going to use a wooden roof on it just because that looks nice to me. It's also kind of the most straightforward section as well. We're doing a custom window just so we can have a little bit of a see-through element. The doorways and the ways that people actually go in and out aren't going to be open in the structure, but at least 2 of the windows will be. And if you catch it right at the right angle, you will be able to see the blue sky through it. And I think that's kind of a good visual kind of cue to basically tell people that, yeah, you can go inside the structure. It's safe. You're fine. You're all right. Normally, playgrounds will probably have a lot more open sides and a lot more ways for the parents to probably see into the structure and what's going on inside there. That's not really the case in mine. Doesn't bother me too much. It's a fantasy location anyway, and it could be fun for the kids. Who knows? I don't know. Sometimes I don't think things through. I just build things that look cool, and really that's what you guys are here for. So congratulations, you get to see something cool get built. Brick sided on the windows sections. We're gonna, of course, change the color of this instead of that sandstone color to something a little bit more towards that plaster. We're going to give some wooden beams on the corners just to tie that into the other building as well, and some wooden little window sills for those. And wasn't quite sure how I wanted to handle this last little section of the actual jungle gym. And it's a little bit of a conflicting idea that I had in my head. I wanted a fireman's pole because those are pretty common in playgrounds. They're a good way for kids to get down, and also it's a challenge to climb up them. So it's basically a 2-way kind of section that you can have. But I didn't want the pole to go all the way across the deck. I think it looked a little weird. I also didn't want to cover the deck quite yet, but that's kind of what we end up settling upon just because it was the easiest and quickest work around here. So we kind of give it a barn style roof, and we color it a little bit more red and center up the pole and attach it there. That way it's all stable and basically secured. I know it's probably a little bit of a gimmicky look to it, but then again, it is a playground. It's not really supposed to look 100% I guess the most amazing buildings in the world. It's more like a miniature representation of the European section. Plenty of benches and seating around the front side and a little bit along the back. We'll be fencing off the sidewalk from the play area just so kids kind of stay within their boundaries and they kind of don't run out here, because that would be, 1, disturbing, and then 2, the parents, I doubt, want to have them just leave the area without them seeing or noticing it themselves. And so we're using a lot of these little iron fences to create a little bit of a flower bed element along the sidewalk here. In fact, we'll probably continue that along the seam of the sidewalk here a little bit later. Put some trees in there because, hey, that looks good and clean, and then we can worry about putting in some larger forms and coloring in a lot of this grass. So this is pretty much it for today's speed build section. We're gonna go ahead into real time, show you guys how it all looks, and of course you guys in the comments will let me know what you think. Okay, so here we are taking a look at the I guess the little European playground area here at the edge in between the 2 new zones. If you guys want to see what the new theme is going to look like or help form it, there's a little bit of an announcement before we get into talking about this a little bit more. We're going to be working on the first piece here on the live stream this Sunday, so if you want to come check that out, you can, and then you'll get to be part of I guess, coming up with how things are going to be looking going forward for a little while. Other than that, you can see we have this nice fenced off area. I do want to add little gates and stuff, but that's kind of stuff I ran out of time for. You can tell this episode's a little bit longer than normal. We got some vending machines in the back there for the kids. We get that fireman's pole, the double slides, you know, a nice open covered area. I didn't want to do a whole lot of specific themes like low-lying walls or, you know, areas like dead-end areas. I wanted everything to be really open and kind of flow into itself. But we have the 2 slides. We have our really cool little swing set, which is just 2 simple planks there. I think that's effective. A nice open and kind of arching area throughout this whole front section leading up to one of the European buildings. I like the red brick one. It's kind of pretty unique looking, and the fact that the roof interacts with the barn style a little bit makes it look pretty cool. We have this under kind of covered way passage into the back, which has our climbing wall. Now I put this net up here, just something else to grab onto when you're pulling yourself up and over on the deck. If I just ended the wall here, it would be a little difficult. So I did raise it up a little bit and put this net here just so people can grab onto it. And it acts like a little bit of a fence so people don't just fall off the wall here. So they have to kind of make a conscious decision to come down here. Some other little net walls going along here, making sure, you know, people don't just run into the slide. That wouldn't be good, I don't think. The slide has a nice wooden support beam going up it, just to prevent that from shaking around too much as people go through and transfer their energy through that spiral. I just like the little staircases and all the little nooks and crannies you get when you build a playset. Here is the rope ladder going up one of the sides. We get some benches, some teeter-totter kind of seahorses here, and that is basically it for this new section. Of course, plenty of greenery elements. I wanted to keep it rather loose though. Nothing that people can't manicure too easily. You know, these are kids after all, so they're going to be probably trying to rip branches off and pull off leaves on things. So leaving it a little bit barren and open, I think, is for the best in this case. And it also does a good job of blocking a lot of these scenery elements. Now, I did get a couple questions on the last stream about what I'm going to do for the back of these buildings. That is dependent upon, I guess, how it bugs people, because this is about the normal viewing height of a person, and it doesn't really come up too often when you can see those elements. And even when it does, there's stuff in the foreground to kind of distract you. The kids kind of see around a little bit better up here, but it's really not that bad. It just looks a little bit weird from this perspective, but this is a perspective that it's not really built to be seen at anyways, and that's just something I wanted to address. Also, I wanted to show you guys here the name of our coaster. If you missed the last stream, I did announce the name, and I also tweeted out a picture of it. So the name of our wooden coaster is Whirlwind. You guys helped me to design the sign here on stream. We came up with a nice kind of blue and white tone, very simple two-tone text to that. Gave it a little bit of a 3D presence using some wooden little support structures there. Also on stream last week, we went ahead and finished up the queue. So we have all the trees and shrubs hugging this thatch covered building. We have a little bit of a broken wagon over here, and as a suggestion, I spent too much time making a test seat so people can see if they can fit and take a nice safe ride. This is actually kind of basically to scale replica of the seat that they'll actually be sitting in. So that was fun to make. Anyways, that's it for today's episode of Alpine Odyssey. If you guys enjoyed this stuff, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more creative goodness such as this. Leave a comment down below. I love everyone's feedback on Alpine Odyssey. I use it to make the park. It's as much of your guys' stuff as it is mine. So until then, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.